In the fall of 2011, massive rains caused flooding throughout Thailand. Thousands of families were displaced. Lada, a young lady, then 9 months pregnant, was in her home when the floodwaters rushed in. She was trapped. Luckily, a rescue boat was sent to take her to dry land just before her home washed away. But upon boarding the boat, Lada went into labor, and that's when baby Nam made her entrance into this world. They spent their first few nights in an overcrowded hallway of a military evacuation center. They were then provided with a rugged, sturdy family tent that would become their home for the next 3 months. The tent not only provided Lada with meeting her shelter needs and kept them warm, but as importantly, it allowed her to take care of her newborn baby in privacy and with dignity. Shelter, warmth, and dignity. A similar scene played out 8 months later in Peru when the mighty waters of the Amazon crested at record highs. Families up and down the Amazon River were displaced, homes washed away, belongings gone, crops destroyed. Those lucky enough to have their homes still standing were forced to build raised floors and live in the crawl space just a few feet tall between the top of their ceilings and the top of their roof. The floodwaters right underneath them. In one of the impacted villages, Manikamiri, Orlando marveled at the tool set provided to him. A hoe head, pliers, hammer, rope, a saw. The families were able to rebuild their homes and village on higher ground, less likely to be impacted by future disasters and floods. But it also allowed them to rebuild their homes, plant their crops, and seek work requiring tools, therefore being able to earn money for food and other supplies. The toolkits provided them with independence. Like 1 million other children, 12-year-old Ahmed fled Syria due to conflict. On a 6-day journey, he crossed into Iraqi Kurdistan, hand in hand with his mother, father, and 6 siblings. Our teams found Ahmed, here in the middle in the pink, sitting on the side of a road in the refugee camp waving at passersby. He was with 2 of his friends from school back in Syria, a really rare connection in a refugee camp full of strangers. The children told our teams they were bored. They had been out of school for 2 months. They had nothing to do. For children like this, receiving an activity kit that has pens, paper, pencils, a coloring book, a chalkboard, a teddy bear, it can break the boredom. The supplies can allow them to continue their education. It encourages imagination in a bleak environment, and it, lets kids be kids. The supplies brought comfort. Each year, millions of people, like Lada, baby Nam, and Orlando, are displaced by floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, and other natural disasters. Countless others, like Ahmed, are caught up in conflict or other humanitarian crises. Most of these disasters won't make your evening news, be headlines in your paper, or be a part of your drive time radio programming. But to the families that have lost everything in this unseen disaster, the loss is very real. And to those, through no fault of their own, have nothing left, hope can be hard to find. ShelterBox is an international disaster relief charity that focuses on providing humanitarian supplies that bring shelter, warmth, and dignity to disaster survivors. The tent that was baby Nam's first home, the toolkits used to rebuild a village in Peru, and the children's items used to comfort Syrian refugee Ahmed, those are all part of the ShelterBox. So too are water purification units, pots and pans, a cook stove, blankets, ground sheets, solar lights. The common response to disaster comes in the form of food and medicine, obviously critical components in disaster recovery. ShelterBox instead chooses to focus on providing emergency shelter in the critical days, weeks, and months that follow the disaster. Our intervention is meant to fill the gap between disaster-caused homelessness and the rebuilding of permanent shelter. It's meant to protect families from the elements, insect and waterborne diseases, allow them to live with independence, keep their communities intact. See, this is very important because we all know that disasters can, after disasters, there's a huge loss of family, members, livelihoods, belongings, they're all gone. But to those that survive, a new set of worries begins immediately after the disaster. Where will I go? What will I eat? What do I do? Having access to adequate shelter, clean water, and the other supplies ShelterBox provides allows survivors to use their already compromised capacity and energy to focus on other essentials. They're able to more quickly find sustainable food sources, get back to work, find schooling for their children, and begin to engage in important social and community structures. This is illustrated to me in this photo. This is of families that are recovering from floods in Niger. Women are socializing while cooking. Children are playing. Life is returning to normal. This is what our founders had in mind when they founded ShelterBox as a Rotary Club project in the UK 13 years ago. Since then, we've grown into our own organization with international support. People, businesses, civic and school groups all sponsor shelter boxes to be sent to families. And every ShelterBox donor, whether they give $1 toward the box or the full $1,000 required to sponsor a complete box, receives a tracking number and is able to determine to which disaster and which country the box they supported was delivered. So how do we do this? We've responded to more than 200 disasters in 90 countries with the help of volunteers that leave everything in their normal lives behind to deploy into the uncertainty and chaos of disaster. These folks work hand in hand with partners, including civil defense agencies, other non-governmental organizations, and community leaders to find the most vulnerable families. And in order to do that, that means that our boxes and our people often go where others can't or won't, and that means they have to go by any means necessary. Now, sometimes that's a large airplane. It might be a small boat. And yet other times, less modern means of transportation are used. I mean, never discount the sturdy donkey or ox. Because they're in pursuit of the most vulnerable families and they work with the partners to find these folks, that means that families with children, the elderly, disabled, or those injured are often first to receive our aid. You know, the supplies we provide these people are very important because hope is hard to find. And after disaster, hopelessness and despair can set in. Imagine for a moment this is your street, your community. Everything you have known in life, reduced to rubble by an earthquake in minutes, gone. Or perhaps you've crossed for days over a desert with your infant child, an elderly mother, to arrive at a makeshift refugee camp in Kenya to find this. Nothing waiting for you. No shelter to keep your family safe, no clean water to drink. These are the people ShelterBox helps. And the supplies we provide, the tents, water purification units, mosquito nets, all very important. But perhaps the most important supply we're providing is hope. Having the ability to live self-sufficiently with the contents of the box will have an impact long after the disaster. Our focus is on helping families get beyond that disaster event, live in the here and now, and begin to hope for a brighter future and rebuild their communities. We couldn't do this without donors from around the world. And to many disaster survivors, these donors mean everything. Just the notion that a donor, a stranger from afar, cared enough to give the gift of a shelter box to a disaster survivor, somebody they've never met, can provide the hope and motivation that survivor needs to go on. Hope in a big green box, a simple concept with a life-saving impact. Thank you.